Welcome to the Extra Time Podcast, where you'll hear sports stories you might not have heard about from people you might not have heard of. Let's get into this week's show.
Hello all, it is great to have your company on another episode of the Extra Time Podcast. Things are a little different. You'll see things are different in terms of personnel, and things will be different in terms of content today as well. Just letting you know from now on, at least for this month of AFL football finals, we're going to separate that yap. You don't have to listen to it if you don't want to. If you just tune in to hear about all the other amazing sports in the world that our Aussies are a part of, tune into this podcast. This is going to be the Aussies Around the Grounds podcast. So make sure if you're tuning in to watch footy, that'll be on the other one. Me and Mark will be talking about the AFL season, the finals coming up, all the rest. And this is just solely Aussies Around the Grounds and all the other sports. And hopefully you won't have to listen to us yap for as long and you'll stay around, which is what we're doing it for. And while we're saying why we do things, we're going to start with This Is Why We Play. But just before that, welcome into Lorenzo, Bodie and Josh making his debut.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Thank you. Good to be back.
Good to dissect all the Australian action over the past little while.
Yep. And it starts, as I said, with This Is Why We Play. And it was very, very hard to pick this week. But Channel 9, throughout the Olympic Games, I did say that a lot of their coverage as a whole isn't amazing. Not massively happy with it. A little bit hard to navigate 9 Now and the like. But I do have to give them their flowers because some of their documentaries and 60 Minutes sort of things they've been doing in sport is incredible. And Curtis McGrath's the other night was no exception. If you don't know the story of Curtis, he's technically a Kiwi, but he is Australian. He will represent the green and gold in the Paralympic Games once again after winning golds in Rio and in Tokyo. He is an absolute superstar in the boat, both kayak, canoe, but he doesn't have any legs. And that story is because he was serving for Australia in Afghanistan, and he was basically, in simple words, watching the documentary, the saving grace for the tanks and basically the battalions going through. He'd have to clear the way. So he was there with his metal detector. Long story short, it's 45 degrees. He got a little bit weary, which you would, and they were trying to move this big rock. He thought it was this one rock. It was the wrong one. And on his way back to where they were supposed to be, he stepped on a mine and his legs basically got blown off. So these are the sort of stories that, it's not inspiring you to go through something like this, but his dedication to basically, he was walking within a couple months of the incident, and then straight into the boat and paddling, and he is an absolute star, and just the way that these athletes throughout the Paralympic Games. So this week my selection's sort of not just Curtis but a lot of them, because the Paralympics I often go under the rug a little bit compared to the Olympic Games, which I'm not a massive fan of, because yes, there's awesome stories in the Olympics, but the Paralympics, every single one of them, every single Paralympian has a story, and they deserve to be heard. So you can nitpick any one of them. And Channel 9 are doing a massive job showing us all the stories with these documentaries. So you could go on and on. The Steelers one last week was unreal as well. Obviously our wheelchair rugby team. If you don't know them and you're not sure about wheelchair rugby, just turn it on. They play tomorrow night, their first game. I think it's at 7:30, which is a nice time slot. And we'll be having to do it the long way. We have to go and qualify, which we haven't done for a number of years. But we've got absolute stars in that lineup. And one of those is actually a Gippsland legend. This is Bo Vernon. He tragically became a quadriplegic in a football game, which is the ugly part of AFL footy. He was an absolute star. He could have gone very far in footy, but he chose to, after recovering, he started his family and he chose to coach, and he's an absolute star of a coach. I think he's won 3 or 4 premierships at 2 different clubs in local footy down there, and now he's going to make his debut for the Steelers, so I can't wait to see that. But the Paralympics this week, I mean, they're just going to be wall-to-wall action, stuff you just can't miss. And I can't wait for it. It's going to be phenomenal. There's stories everywhere, like I said. And that opening ceremony is tonight, I think at 3:30 a.m. Not sure if I'll be up for that one. I've got work tomorrow. But obviously we'll be able to see the replays and stuff. You can watch it all on Channel 9 Now and the likes. We're going to be doing our best to cover all the results and give them to you as they come. You can also let us know if we miss any. Take it all in on Channel 9 now. It's going to be massive. We're always very, very well represented. And just keep tuning in. Channel 9 doing great things, but make sure you watch all the coverage and hear all these stories, because trust me, they'll inspire you. They've inspired me to keep giving my best. And no matter what happens in life, you can always achieve great things, as all of these wonderful athletes are doing. But without further ado, on that theme of Aussies around the grounds, these guys will be in Paris. It is time for the official Aussies around the grounds segment, which always starts, boys, with my weekly wonder. And this one happened just overnight. The Nazi Kokkinakis in the US Open has defeated Stefanos Tsitsipas in his first match. Part of that might be Tsitsipas being really washed. I haven't seen him really achieve much in quite a few Grand Slams lately. But we all know this guy's talent. Like, he's a serious player, Thanasi Kokkinakis. And so it's not really a surprise. Him and Nick Kyrgios are two of the more talented players we've had. It's just whether they've been able to stay on the court.
Yeah, I think it's injuries for Thanasi.
That's right.
His career.
So, as I mentioned, he's my weekly wonder, but just a little wrap early. It's one of the biggest fields we've had at a US Open in quite a while. Here it is, with all the Aussies in gold there. This is thanks to First Serve and Brett Phillips at SEN. He does a great job covering it. He was up last night covering it at 1 a.m. for Channel 9, I think. So a lot. Quite a lot. I'm not going to read through those because we're trying to cut time, not add time to the podcast. But a lot of these guys have got great results to start as well. Alexei Poprin, who I think plays again tonight, he won his first match, as did Maya Joint, Isla Tomljanovic, Ricky Hijikata, Geordie Thompson, Tristan Schoolkate, obviously the Cock, the Demon as well, Maxi Purcell, Chris O'Connell, all getting first round wins there. I'm not sure it went too well for all the others, but great to see so many Australians in one of the biggest slams of the year.
I've just had a look at the draw. If Kokkinakis and Schoolkate win their second round matches, they'll play each other in the third round.
And if
And
There you
that's the
go.
only bad thing about having so many.
Aussies v Aussies, that's
Yeah.
right.
and I think if Poprin wins his second game, he'll play Djokovic in the third round, which is always a fun
Always
one.
a good matchup, isn't it?
It's scary
Absolutely.
as well, because he's basically just won his first gold medal, and who knows what sort of momentum that'll give him. And if the
Yeah,
Cock
that's
is to defeat him, maybe he's the GOAT. Who knows?
Time will tell.
Yeah, but it's good to see them all playing, and those who got through, it's awesome as well. But I'm most happy about the Demon, who was a great chance at Wimbledon. He was a great chance in the Olympics. Injury really cost him, but he's our best seeded player. He's got all the skill. The thing that's been hurting him is his serve. If it was a little bit stronger, he would be very, very hard to beat. His court coverage is insane. He's got all the shots, and he's got that hunger that old mate Leighton used to have, which is why I love watching him so much. But around the places, obviously, as we've been mentioning, the US Open will continue this week. Some big matches to come if our Aussies can get through, and whether we see Djokovic in that final once again, and whether he can win another one. He just does it for fun, or whether Carlos Alcaraz can get him back. I'm very entertained by that. In the NFL, not too much to say, really. There's been a few moves, but Aussies-wise, I'm going to do a massive preseason predictions and basically information session on that to make you all over all the Aussies that are playing. I think rosters will be all finalised this week. It kicks off next week. Next
Would have been
Friday.
perfect if that had aligned with the pre-finals by
100%.
That's right, exactly.
Yeah, but it hasn't worked out.
Unfortunately, it doesn't. But what a game to kick it off will be the Chiefs and the Ravens, which is going to be massive with the reigning MVP and the reigning Super Bowl MVP going head-to-head. But stick around next week. I'll give you a full rundown on that. In the EPL, I mentioned Ange and the Spurs last week. It was a 1-1 draw at Leicester. They were at home over the weekend, and they got a 4-0 win over Everton. So back on track after Ange was a little bit grumpy after that 1-1 draw. Didn't take their chances. They did on the weekend, and Son with 2 goals in their win at home over Everton saw them go up to 5th. They had a great start last season, as we mentioned on the podcast, so hopefully they can get going. And City, again, looking pretty good. Unfortunately, my Bees went down to Liverpool on the weekend. I think Woods' United are doing all right, which he'll be happy about. But none more about that sport. We'll go to a better one. Formula One was back.
Sure, it's been a while.
About time. Unfortunately, Oscar couldn't keep his great run of form up in terms of podiums, but he was great getting back and
Good weekend.
Absolutely.
just had to sit behind the red
Yes,
the red car.
The moving barricade of Charles Leclerc. As it seemed to be, I think I was saying off air that Oscar spent about 60% of the race less than a second or a second second and a half behind Charles, and just couldn't get past him. But I guess that Zandvoort Straight's probably the only real overtaking place, and you need to be about 3/10 behind. So he's
Yeah, it's a very skinny track in most places, and the corners are quite tight and they come up quite quickly. So that straight, as you mentioned, off the banking is the only real place, but you've got to be genuinely quicker to overtake because it's a very tight hairpin at the other end. And I saw a lot of cars defend quite well even out of turn one.
yeah, it's known as like the roller coaster. It's the same Portimao in Portugal was,
Yeah.
and then that's obviously not on the calendar anymore. But it's known as a roller coaster of a track. It's very narrow, a lot of sharp, quick turns. But I don't know. Oscar did well. He's he's a second year driver finishing
Superstar, absolutely.
He's finishing fourth.
And
Pretty much every race.
He's the only one that's driven every lap this year, and I've keep saying it. You buy stocks in him, buy stocks in
Yeah.
McLaren because they have the quickest car, but he is going to be something. He's got all the tools already, and my favourite tool that he has is his maturity and his ability to keep his head as, like you said, a sophomore driver. Just his second year, and a lot of the commentary was sort of like because Norris was 20 seconds ahead of Verstappen, which no one's seen in years because the only other person that's been doing that is Max himself.
Yeah.
People were sort of saying, why can't he get past Leclerc? But, I mean, like I said, Pierre Gasly in the Alpine was defending Sainz out of turn one. So it's not like, you just get past. It's Zandvoort.
I think the only driver that wasn't able to defend anyone was Magnussen, as we mentioned, where he had 3 or 4 cars go past him on the same corner.
It was just a nightmare weekend for Haas with their sponsor almost ruining the whole weekend by saying you can't race, we're holding your cars and all the mess of that is. But that's what happens with Haas in the end, I guess.
It'll be interesting to see how they go next year. Obviously, they're kind of transitioning back to that Ferrari feeder, that Alfa Romeo was and now isn't because it's now Kick. But I don't know, Aussie-wise, I think Oscar's the star that we've been wanting for a while. I mean, Daniel had the gravitas of being Daniel. Like, he's who a lot of current F1 fans, he's the one that brought them there. Everyone fell in love with him.
And he's the personality. And
yeah,
I saw a podcast with Oscar's mum, who is quality. Make sure you go follow Nicole Piastri on Twitter. It is great. And she was saying, she was sort of recounting the time when Oscar found out he was going to be in F1. And she was sort of saying, that's awesome. And then when she realised he's going to McLaren and kicking out Daniel, they were both just like, oh no. Because everybody loved Daniel and not many Aussies really loved Oscar at the start because he's this quiet kid that thinks he's really good. Been champion in the other disciplines, but I mean, no one hates the kid now because you just respect talent and you respect how bloody good he is. And Danny on the other end, I don't know, maybe he's washed. He wasn't quick in quali, he wasn't quick in the race. They try different strategies. They've done it all year. Sometimes they've stitched him up with strategy, but most of the time they're trying to just make something different happen. The car's not great. Like Tsunoda was right at the back, but it's just not the same Ricciardo, I don't think.
I think when you're in a non-top 4 team, because F1's such a... Like, if you're not one of the top 4 cars, your race isn't against other drivers, it's against your teammate. And that's where Daniel was really... Like, we've just seen Logan Sargent being dropped by Williams, I think, overnight.
Yep.
And it's because, in the first 14 races of the year, I think he out-qualified Albon once, and that happened to be maybe twice, and one of them happened to be on the weekend when Albon was disqualified from qualifying, and Sargent didn't even set a lap.
And the damage, not just to the physical damage, but the damage in money he's done to that car, which I think is the most important thing in Formula One right now. If you are, like you said, down the bottom, not in a top 4 team, and then if you are like a second driver or a driver that's coming in later than the other one, which Daniel is. Yuki's been there for ages. Daniel came in. Your main goal in one of those teams is just don't crash the thing. Like, don't ruin it because those teams don't have money anyway. They need every cent they get, which sounds crazy because they've got millions. They need every cent they get just to try and get a point, which is crazy.
Well, it's now seen in the last 3 seasons, Logan's just lost his seat because of damage cost. Mick Schumacher obviously lost his at the end of, I think, not last season, but the season before because of the millions of dollars worth of damage he was doing to that Haas car. He's got to stay consistently on track. I guess Valtteri is probably the one that you look to as the experienced head that just keeps the car on the track all the time. He's not scoring points, but he's not also running the car off the road.
Yeah, and one race, if you have the car on the track, cars in front, stuff will happen and you will score points. But if you don't have the car on the track, you won't. And it's as simple as that.
Pretty simple, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a simple sport when you break it down. You just go around, you make sure you're still there, and then you try and score. But I think, and that's why, more than as long as I can remember, there's like so many rookies waiting, and they're good enough.
Yeah.
Or not rookies, or even young guys that have come out of beasted F2, F3.
Yeah.
And they just don't get a seat. And I think that has to be part of why, because Valtteri's like, yes, he hasn't scored this year, but he's in an awful car and he's still keeping it on the track.
Yep.
And he's not costing them money. And they know that if a chance arises, which are very rare for teams like that, he will score because he's not going to try and do something silly.
Yeah.
Whereas rookies have, as good as they might be, are always carrying the risk of doing that. I don't know. We're all still stressed because they haven't announced what the hell's going on with Daniel yet. And obviously Red Bull is one of the hardest teams to follow. I think they're about to blow up because there's too many egos. There's too much power. Not enough power to go around with how much hunger there is for power in that team. And that trickles down to RB. Everybody knows in F1, and we're not all experts at all. We haven't got the information that they get at all. But everybody knows that Sergio Perez probably isn't performing how a Red Bull driver should be. And yes, that car is absolutely awful in comparison to where it used to be. But that's the thing. The other thing with F1 is money, like we said before, and power. And unfortunately, Daniel doesn't have that power. And Red Bull are too scared, I think, to pull Perez out, especially with the Mexican GP coming up. And, the Perez family and all his sponsorships and stuff, which Red Bull need because they're going downhill. So I think that's why we have to wait. But then I think the risk is, out of all the rookies and all the young drivers, Liam Lawson has been in F1 and done very, very well and not crashed the car. So it's a very scary wait, and especially now that the news came through that Logie, like you said, not going to be around next season. And it sort of all came to a close on the weekend when he had a massive crash.
Yeah, it was a monster.
Ripped the car in half. Crash. Car was on fire. I heard that he didn't even really know it was on fire at the time, which is not a great way to be. But we're happy he's okay.
Yeah,
that's right.
He's had a tough year. I remember at the Oz Grand Prix when he was said, you're fine. Your teammate crashed his car, but you don't get to race. So he's been a little bit of a punching bag this year, the American, but he's no longer around. It is very nice that everyone's getting around him. Like all F1 social media is getting around him. Even the memes are sort of going, he might be out, but he joins the GOAT Club with Nick Latifi, which is a little bit of fun.
Yeah.
And his teammate, who they were close. Like they're not often close like this and supportive. Alex is a great guy.
And Alex has been in the exact same position. Obviously, at a much bigger team, but he got dropped a bit. Like Pierre was obviously at Red Bull, and then Alex overtook him, and then Alex got dropped and didn't have a seat for a year and a half, and then came back to a much lesser team. So Alex has been in the position. F1's a cruel sport. You're likely to see. I think Kick is the only one that hasn't, or Kick and RB are one of the only two that haven't confirmed their entire driver lineup. I doubt Guan Yu gets a seat next year, which is rough. But when you're not scoring points, it's hard to keep it. I've just seen that you've changed to the new Williams driver, which is pretty cool.
So Franco Colapinto is that new driver. Hopefully that's the way you pronounce it. First Argentinian on the grid for 23 years.
Remember the name.
Straight out of F2 with not bucket load of experience, but he was obviously in Williams' academy, and they've pulled him straight in. And the reason we've brought this up is first to congratulate Franco. It's a pretty great achievement. And another Williams driver debuting fresh at Monza. Yep. We saw how well that worked for them a couple of years ago. They don't mind Monza because of the long straights, and they're pretty good in straight lines. So we'll see how he goes. But the main reason we mentioned this is we're talking about Liam Lawson and Daniel Ricciardo and the merry-go-round and all of that. Lawson was extremely, very well linked to this seat for the last 2 weeks. That's where all the news was going. And, of course, Big Helmet and the Red Bull crew said, no. He can't go there because we want him still. We want to just hold him there. The poor Kiwi has been just holding on they have to move his whole life. He can't really afford to actually live over in England, but he's just taking a chance for years. They haven't given him a proper one. And he's holding up just enough faith that maybe they'll give him a seat. And I think it is between him and Ricciardo, because I don't think Red Bull have the balls to pull that trigger and go Daniel to the big team and Perez out. As much as they should, as bad as Perez's results have been, as much as he's crashed the car, it's interesting. And I think, like we said off air before, this might just be that nail for Daniel.
Yep, I'd be shocked if Liam isn't the second driver at RB next year. I think that Helmut has told him, to come out in the press over the weekend that he's got a seat for next season. This one, whilst it wouldn't have been a seat for next year, it would have given him half a season to prove that he still is worthy of it. Raises question marks over. We hope that Franco goes well, but straight out of F2, he only raced in 2 F2 races last year. He finished 25th in the championship. I know that he did well in F3 last year as well, but he's spent some time out of the sport. But Oscar did that, and Oscar's Oscar. So you never know, this kid could come on, and then they could be in a real pickle next year with Sainz, Albon, and
But
Franco.
At the same time, like we've been saying, he's a rookie and he hasn't proven that he can keep an F1 car on the track because he's never driven one. So it's like, is it better than Logan or not? Who knows? I guess the change of face maybe is just risk enough.
Yeah.
I'm sure that they sort of made this decision with Logan thinking, oh yeah, we'll get Lawson. And then Red Bull were going, we don't want you to get him do well and then keep him.
Yeah.
Not that they can, but it's all fun and games. And that's how F1 is. Unfortunately, Daniel didn't get the result on the weekend again. Just wasn't quick enough at all throughout the weekend. What I did see, though, is my boy, Max Verstappen. He just keeps interrupting Aussies around the grounds. Should make it Aussies and Dutchmen around the grounds. But
well, it's really just one Dutchman that you keep
he's a pretty
up.
special Dutchman, though. And this photo, I think, sums it up. He's the best driver on the grid. He's driving the absolute pants off that car, which was awful. Wouldn't turn at times and took the lead at the start because Norris is just fully incompetent when he's on pole into the first corner, which I was loving, obviously, up and about. So for him to keep getting himself onto this podium is great because the team is about to blow up. He's not going to be able to turn to anybody because they're all going to be trying to go at each other, which is not what you want. He's had the best season ever, like single season ever, and he's knackered. You can see that.
Yeah.
And I think, unfortunately, when he was winning last year, I was giving my good mate Tage a lot of stick, saying he's going to overtake Lewis. He's the best ever. I don't think he's actually going to race for even half as long as Lewis does.
I don't think he wants to. He's obviously on the media. They asked him midweek whether it was his 200th Grand Prix start on the weekend. They asked if he's going to be there for another 200, and he flat out said no. He's mentioned that a few times that he's not necessarily in it for the long haul. Like, I thought that there was potential that last year would be his last lap to 3. Like it takes a lot out of you. Like you saw Lewis after 21 in 22 season, like he'd obviously been at the top for so long, and people go, oh, he's had it easy, but it's not easy to win in F1 as consistently as the two of them have.
Opposite of easy. And a lot of people will say, like he had it so easy last year. He was winning races by 30 seconds, but it's just not. Like it's the most demanding, toughest sport in the whole world to compete in, and especially when you're at the front because you've got 19 blokes chasing you. And on top of that, he's got a team which is imploding. He's got a teammate which has not helped him since 2021 because he's been garbage and he's crashing the car and causing them to spend money repairing his car instead of upgrading it. And they can't upgrade it because they're cheated.
Yeah.
So obviously they've been well overtaken. But the good part about that is we are witnessing the greatest season since 2021 without a doubt.
Yeah.
We've got 7 different winners, 3 drivers who have won at least 2 races.
Yep.
Fantastic.
And a genuine championship fight, as much as I hate saying
Yes,
it.
I wanted to ask you about this. So I've got up the Wikipedia here. He's 70 points clear of Lando Norris, Max Verstappen. Now, I heard they obviously give a point for fastest lap, and there's still 3 sprint races left. So ignore those 33. If Norris wins every other race for the rest of the season and Verstappen finishes second, he's 7 points ahead, Verstappen, of Norris. That's the 7 points he gave up to Oscar Piastri in Hungary. So that's how close it could be. And again,
I saw a thing that if Norris wins every race, gets every fastest lap in sprints and all the races, and Max comes second in all, Norris wins the championship by a point.
Yeah. Okay, there you go. So it
it's-
could be close.
Which is
Do you think it will
2021,
be?
take 2.
That's right.
How confident are you that Verstappen still wins?
I think it's gonna be close, but not that. I think that we're gonna know by
Second last race?
probably Mexico.
Yeah.
Because the wheels, like what's that? Looking at that, there's 4 races before Mexico now. You're gonna know if the Red Bull car is gonna kick it. Like you're gonna know. In the
What
next
we know
month.
for sure, the only thing we know for sure is that Red Bull is not getting better.
Yeah.
It will not improve.
That's the issue. Is if the Red Bull car isn't getting better, is the McLaren car getting better enough that Oscar's going to be the factor.
Yeah.
So if Lando can win all the races he wants and he still needs to do that, Oscar's going to be the one that wins in the championship.
And this is what, and I don't want to go on a rant here because again we're trying to make a shorter podcast. This is what pisses me off the most about the whole Red Bull situation. Max has to win this championship against 2 drivers in a 10 times better car. His teammate is not going to help.
Yeah.
No.
Like he
But Red Bull
needs
have
his
always set
teammate
up
to
their
help.
car to focus on their number 1 driver, which for the last, 8 years basically, even not officially,
And I don't
has
know
been
if
Verstappen.
like maybe Ricardo's no better to help Verstappen than Perez is, but Perez has never been there. It's been Max fighting the 2 McLarens and the Ferraris and the Mercedes at the front, who all have 2 cars up there.
Yeah.
So the other thing for certain is he is still the best driver on the grid, and whatever he gets out of that car, not many others could.
No.
But I think I put this photo up here because I think he's just gassed.
Yeah.
And
Looks exhausted in
Well,
that.
looks like the
if
only-
he gets
Absolutely
anywhere near the
exhausted.
championship, it actually might be his best performance
Yeah.
out of all of them. Because
the only race that Red Bull have had both cars up there to seal a championship was 2021. If Checo doesn't defend Lewis at that race, he doesn't win.
Oh,
it.
yeah.
Despite the
Yeah.
Latifi crash, Lewis is going to be 40 seconds ahead and is going to be able to pit.
Yeah.
Like so, Checo served well for Max's first, and after that, he's not been there.
but at the
which is
same
unfortunate.
time, Oscar coming in could ruin it for Lando as well, which is
Yeah.
good. And I think that's best case scenario for us
yeah,
as either
Yeah.
neutral or Aussie supporters. If Oscar gets points and gets up into that top 3 and wins a couple races off Lando or beats Lando in a couple races or qualifying,
Yeah.
then it's up to McLaren, and they'll probably
yeah,
absolutely bottle it because they'll get stressed
I-
about favouring one of them. And Max just simply needs to just get whatever he can and
Yeah.
try and get on that podium every race.
Yeah.
But the unfortunate thing is Singapore's coming up, and he is awful at Singapore. I don't know
Yeah.
what it is, but I don't think I've ever really seen him really compete for that win.
yeah. I don't think the play's on the drivers' championship. I think Max is probably far enough ahead. Like he's going to be consistent enough. He's going to finish high enough at some races, and Lando's not going to win every race. If he does, wow, but he's not going to.
Well, he's run 2 races in his career. He
yeah.
acts like a reigning world champion,
Yeah.
but he's won 2 races in his career. Yes, he's got the fastest car, but I'd actually take Oscar as an all-round driver because of his maturity and the way
Yeah.
that he's not actually bothered
The-
by...
Mm.
Like last year, the Ferraris, which were really quick, were fighting him. He doesn't get bothered by that sort of stuff. He doesn't try
Yeah.
stupid stuff. He might, make a mistake like running into his Jackman. But like on track, he doesn't make the mistakes that Norris does, which he has with Verstappen under pressure, and act like a genuine baby. I don't want to rant about Lando Norris, but I had a good conversation with my good mate Tay, who we follow every race and watch every race together, and he said, "Oh, I think the championship's genuinely on, and Lando can get him." And I said, "Nah, I think Max will be fine as long as he keeps
Yeah.
finishing second." And he said, "Yeah, but what if he DNFs?" I'm like,
Yeah.
"He's not going to DNF."
I think
He said,
the-
what if he crashes into someone?
Yeah.
I'm like, I
Mm.
think Norris would crash
Yeah.
before
I
Verstappen
think
does.
the drivers is done. The constructors is a genuine shout that
Yeah.
Red Bull aren't going to win it. Because
And hats off to McLaren. Like
Well, they're only 30 points.
they're only 30 points
in
behind.
front.
They could make that up in one
Well,
race weekend.
right.
Yeah.
if
this
anything
McLaren
happened.
team, they were awful at the start of last year.
Yeah.
Off the back of that, when Danny was there, they were finishing like 5th or 6th, going backwards. Like the development looked like it was there in a couple races, like at Monza and stuff like that, and then just completely not there. This year has been absolutely phenomenal. So if they win, like, respect to them, and they have
I'll
an
be-
amazing driver lineup. Like pinching Oscar from Alpine might be the greatest move in history.
Well,
So
yeah, the Alpine have kind of rectified that issue though.
yes, they sure have, and that is a great segue. Could we have 3? You wrote a great article about it on the Extra Time website. Make sure you tune in and give that one a read. It's an absolute ripper. Jack Doohan, not Alex, not the cricketer. The cricketer's not going to be there. I made that mistake last week. I won't make it next year. He'll make his debut in Melbourne because next year, boys, we are the first race of the
again.
season, as we should be, once again.
Very
it's an
good.
absolute
Exciting.
mess having those races in the Middle East in the middle of
Yeah,
Ramadan. Like, absolute mess. Melbourne will kick off the season. Jack Doohan will be in the Alpine alongside Pierre Gasly. I don't care if it's quick or not. How good is it going to be to see him there? This year he did a lap with the old man. That was great.
Yeah.
He'll be doing about 75 of them next time.
I'm excited for it. I think that having an Aussie on the grid, it adds, like I mentioned in the article, adds an air to it. But the fact that next year in Melbourne, barring if everything at the end of the year finishes how it is at the moment, and McLaren are the top team or the second top team, we have a live shout for the race win in Melbourne, which hasn't occurred. Daniel obviously finished on the podium and then got disqualified from it. But we have a live chance for a podium, let alone a win, which is Oscar. And if he wins in Melbourne, it would be.
Yeah,
City
public
will shut
holiday
down.
would have to happen.
Fantastic, wouldn't it?
Doing debut in Melbourne, could he do a Webber when he debuted?
Yeah.
Squeeze into a point,
Could he
maybe.
squeeze into a point?
The only problem is the Alpine are historically horrendous
they're
at the
driving
early season.
They're driving a truck, so
Yeah.
Well, they've only got
see
30
how-
points all season. So to grab one at the start of 2025 would be
And then the
something at
question
home.
is
And then
DR. We would love to see him. 3 Aussies is unheard of.
Yeah, we'll take if DR isn't there and Liam Lawson is, he's across
we
the
claim
ditch.
him.
We'll claim him,
And we got Valtteri,
we've got Valtteri,
maybe.
so we could, if all
Valtteri,
things
yeah.
happen and Liam ends up with a non-RB seat and Daniel gets an RB seat and Valtteri's still on the grid, we're gonna have 5 Aussies racing.
It's going to be huge. Like, get your tickets.
Just
Like,
a
if
quarter
you're
of the
missing
grid.
it,
Quarter of the
is
grid.
if you're missing
Aussies
it,
or
you're
claimed Aussies in the case of
Yeah.
Bottas and
if you miss that, you're an idiot, really.
Lawson.
But yeah, it's going to be massive, and I really can't wait for, like I said, however many we have. It's good to claim Valtteri, but I think whether Daniel's driving or not, he'll be there anyway.
Yeah.
Like, he's just the personality of F1. But well done to Jackie Doohan. He deserves it 100%. He's
Yeah.
waited
Well done.
around. He's performed when he's had to perform
Yeah,
as well.
so he's not performed as highly as Oscar. He obviously didn't win. I think I'm pretty from memory. Oscar won F2
Yeah.
and F3. I think
He was fourth in
he
F2
was
last
fourth
year.
a couple times. Fourth, and then his first year he's third. I think he's finished around there. But the consistency, Alpine finally get their Aussie driver. Like, he deserves it. It's good. We're a good motorsporting nation.
Yeah.
We do very well. Without, obviously, the supercars would be one of the premier closed car
touring,
competitions.
yeah.
And it's good to have, I guess, 3 Aussies on the grid. We deserve the race spot. We probably deserve 2. We're just so far away from everywhere that we don't get it. Like, and imagine a race in Melbourne and a race in Adelaide. Like, we probably deserve it. It's just it's not gonna
Adelaide don't
happen.
shut up around that time
Yeah.
every year. It's like Melbourne have done it better. It's just as
Yeah.
simple as that. But
Melbourne just do sport well.
yeah,
We do.
and it's a great track. Hopefully, it's good weather as well. But we can't wait for that. Something else that we can't wait for is the way that this sport is eating its way into this podcast.
Yes.
And for good reason, Lorenzo and
Absolutely.
Josh.
Yep.
It's an absolute ripping sport. I'm speaking of darts. What's going on in the world of darts,
Yeah, well, we'll
boys?
get to the Premier League. We'll
In just a
might
moment.
put that
Yep.
at the end. But our guy, Damon Heta, the #1 Australian, he won yet another tournament, Players Championship 18. So I talked about in the previous Extra Time podcast how he finished runner-up in New Zealand.
Yep.
He got on the plane and went over to Milton Keynes,
He
back
did
where they
indeed.
usually host events over in Europe. And he won Players Championship 18.
Fantastic.
He beat on the route to that. So you've got to win 7 matches in one day to win a Pro Tour event. So he beat Roby John Rodriguez, Keegan Brown, then a couple of guys I haven't heard of, to be honest, Zonfield and Goffin. Then he beat Danny Noppert, who's this Dutch #2. He beat Cameron Menzies, who's played some good stuff. And then Ryan Searle, heavy metal Ryan Searle, 8-3 in the final, averaging 106. He won the first 3 legs, 16, 11, 13 darts. Searle won the next 3, and then Heta won 5 in a row to claim his second PDC title of the year. He's 8th in the world rankings. Josh.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah, 106 average. I mean, look, that's fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think if you're scoring above 95 average, you're doing pretty well.
Yeah.
Pretty well, especially over a long course of legs. But yeah, fantastic effort from him. He said in an interview that he was really stoked about the performance, and I think anyone would be as well. So yeah, looking forward to the next competition that he's playing in, which we will get to in just
German
a
Darts
moment.
Championship, that's coming up this weekend. So these aren't televised events, so you got to
Unfortunately
pay
not.
on PDC subscription
Yeah.
TV. But you can watch the highlights on YouTube. They do put them up there, so there's always good. So he's in there. He's the 4th seed, so he's seeded through to the second round. For that particular tournament, they work off the Pro Tour Order of Merit. That's the 1-year Order of Merit, not the main 2-year main rankings. So he'll be the 4th seed for that. He may play Luke Littler in the 3rd round
Potentially,
if
which
they
would be
win their
a
matches.
cracking
which would be,
matchup, wouldn't it?
Well, they played that classic at the UK Open, didn't they? When, Littler had his chance, but Heta ended up winning that match. So he does have
That was
history
a
of
great game
beating
from memory.
the
Yep.
Premier League champ, Luke Littler. But Damon Heta, he's played great stuff this year. He's in good form. So for the World Grand Prix, which is sort of the next big ranking major, he's top 8 gets seeded for that rather than 16 at the match play. So he's 8th provisionally. He's 9th in the world, but provisionally, by the time we get to the Grand Prix, he'll probably be 8th in the world, which will mean he's a seed, which means he won't face a Humphreys, a Van Gerwen in the first round, which is promising. Simon Whitlock's the other Aussie. He is playing at the German Darts Championship. He hasn't been great this year, and he's outside. He won't play in the Grand Prix. He needs to do something ridiculous to play in the Players' Championship.
That's correct.
And I think he's still outside the World Championship as well. So unless he goes through the World Championship qualifier, we might struggle to see much more Whitlock this year.
He hasn't played many darts on the PDC stage, has he?
No, he hasn't. Not much stage stuff.
The doubles with Header.
Yes.
Which he went okay.
He was all right. He was the better of the two during that World Cup. Header wasn't very good at all, was he?
The thing about the doubles format, lads, is that if you have one of the players that isn't doing too well, you're putting more pressure on the other one to really perform, because you got obviously different sets in between. Yeah, when you alternate. So, he was.
He was good. He was all right there.
He was all right.
But he hasn't really had that much stuff. He does get to play, so before the Grand Prix, in the 13th to the 15th of September is the World Series of Darts Finals. He's been invited to that, even though he only played in 2 events and he lost both of them in the first round 6-1. But I don't even want to get into the whole World Series of Finals. I want to watch that, and then maybe afterwards I'll give a take on where that event should be going, because it's the least prestigious of all the majors. It's basically an invitational event.
It is.
I was listening to a darts podcast online, not online. Is it on? Yeah, online darts. They do their live stream, and one of the guys was saying, you can explain to someone darts. So this is the World Match Play, how you qualify that. The World Championships, how do you qualify that? You can't really explain the World Series because it's an invitational event.
Yep.
It's small fields. It's shorter games. There's a finals at the end of it, but it isn't really well done. I mean, look, someone mentioned on Twitter, Dave Chisnell's playing in the World Series of Darts Finals, which is something he's just been invited into. He hasn't won a major. So if he was to win his first major that way, I'm not sure that would be as good as if he won a Grand Prix or something.
Yeah,
if he actually won it.
Not one of the biggest events in the calendar.
And if he actually won it sort of more legitimately through a proper qualification system. So I'd like to see a few changes to the World Series of Darts, and I think there could be. Australia will be a mainstay on the event, as is New Zealand and the US. Interesting to see next year when they release. We've got Premier League dates. We're interested to see how they line up those particular events, because they released the schedule for the following year about now, September-ish.
Yep.
So we'll wait to see what happens there. I mentioned the World Grand Prix, so there's multiple European Championships and a couple of other Players' Championship events before the cut-off there. The German Darts Championship this weekend. The World Series is the next big major before we get to the Grand Prix, which is the double start tournament. I'm looking forward to seeing the double start. So you got to start and finish on a double.
That's correct.
As well. So that's always a lot of fun.
Because the thing is, in that format, if you don't hit that double within the first 3 to 6 starts, you're way behind in that leg.
Yeah, you're stuffed. Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, we saw the 9 data from Brendan Dolan.
Yes, Brendan Dolan was first, so that was 2011, I think.
It was 11,
so there's only been 3 9-darters, and actually, I'll put a prediction right now. This is not Australian. Luke Littler. He could play 6 legs, so he could be bombed out in the first round. I guarantee you, at some point during the Grand Prix, he'll double in on the bullseye. I can just see. Yeah, he'll do it at some point. Yeah, he'll be frustrated with the way he's going, and he'll just throw at the bullseye, double in. Great. I can see it happening. Even if he only plays 6 legs the whole tournament, it gets knocked out 2-0 first round. I can see him doubling in on the bullseye. So just keep that
tune in on Luke Littler, and we'll keep this one. We'll keep this one.
I'm certain he will double in on the bullseye at some point, and he'll probably double in on his favourite double 10 as well.
He definitely loves to get the crowd up and going, doesn't he? We saw in the Motor Super Series a couple of years ago, which is sort of developing into the PDC events. We saw on the finals night in Portsmouth, he was really getting into the crowd for when he was trying to get those bulls and whatnot to try and
checking out. Yeah,
that's right. So, but no, the Germans. Darts Championships, looking forward to that.
Yep.
Over £175,000 worth of prize money there. So lots of seeded players in attendance. We got Chisnell, Anderson, Gerwin Price, our Australian header, Danny Noppert, Josh Rock, Stephen Bunting, one of your favourite players.
Yes, Stephen Bunting's my guy. So if you have not seen a Stephen Bunting TikTok, by the way, you need to get across that. Stephen Bunting on social media is fantastic.
Please do yourself a favour and go across. And also, watch his walk-ons.
Yes, his walk-ons. His walk-ons. So they're the
incredible.
2 reasons I love him.
Yep.
TikTok and his walk-ons.
His walk-ons are fantastic.
He's marvellous. He's a great character.
I'd say most walk-ons are pretty good. Just how it gets the crowd involved. You can choose your song as well. Obviously, lots of different some variations there. But
Yeah,
also to add
absolutely.
to Bunty, got Ryan Searle, Ross Smith, Martin Schindler. He's been pretty good
he's
of
been
late. Chris Dobie, who also won the Players' Championship 17.
Yes.
Uh,
Was it 18
recently.
or 19? Yeah.
Yep. Ricardo, he's always
Ricardo
like the one.
Francesco, yeah,
Pikachu,
he's
isn't he?
interesting.
He's a
Yeah,
very
he's the defending
interesting
champion, though,
character.
so...
Yes.
And playing at home, it's in his native Germany.
That's correct.
So
Yeah, so the crowd will definitely get involved in that one. Luke Littler as well, as you all
Yeah.
know. Van Veen, he's been good. Michael Smith and Michael
Yeah,
Van
yes.
Gerwen are the 16 top-seeded players for this event. Obviously, you got the tour card holders. Simon Whitlock, as you touched on
Yeah,
earlier, will
Sam
be
Whitlock's...
participating in that one, so hopefully he goes well.
We need him
And
to
that's-
do something big on a European tour
That's
stage,
right.
particularly. If he can
Yeah.
even get to, like... If he can win one match, I think that would
Yeah,
be
if you get through
a
the first or
positive.
second round,
Or
that'd
even past
that'd
the
be
second
positive
round,
for him.
that would
Absolutely.
100% be the right thing. But he's going to need to do some things on the Pro Tour.
Yeah.
Shall we touch on the Premier League just very briefly?
Yeah, sure, but just quickly, yeah,
just
it's
finish-
over 3 days, so
Yeah.
the 30th of August, 1st and the 1st of
1st.
September, across 3 rounds, and then quarterfinals, semi-finals, and finals respectively. First round is best of 11 legs, as long with the second and the third round, and the quarterfinals,
so
and
it's
then
semi-finals.
semi-finals are 13 legs, and the final is 15
Best of.
legs.
First to
So-
6, first to 7, first to 8 in the other
Yes,
vernacular.
correct. So looking forward to see how that matchup goes. We're keeping on.
Heta Littler could be a potential matchup they're looking forward to there as well.
Should be a cracking one if
Yeah.
we can get onto that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We'll see
So-
how the draw plays out.
Yeah.
To
We'll
be
see. They haven't
released
done the
very
draw
soon.
yet, so
No,
we'll wait
it's
and
only
see
just
for
the
that.
seeded players that have been listed.
So Premier League is the big event that happens early part of the year, right after the World Championships, from February to May. Thursday nights they've released the fixture. They sort of built it up, and people were hoping like maybe format change. Maybe they were never going to announce the players they were
No,
playing
they
in it because
weren't.
they won't
No.
announce that till after the World Championship. But Belfast first night played right across Europe, mostly in the UK, but there's a night in Ireland, a night in Germany, and in the Netherlands.
Yep.
Do you expect? I don't expect the format to change. Do you think it will?
I don't think so.
No. Maybe next year, because I think the broadcast rights end after 2025. So there we might see some change.
Potentially, yeah, but I don't think for the next one.
No. I'd expect it to be these 8. As of who makes it, Heta might be a chance. If he is a good back end of the
Potentially,
year,
yeah.
I reckon he might be a good chance with the Premier League. We talked walk-ons. He's someone who
That's
can
right.
who trials some different things on his walk-on seat. That might be part of the appeal because it's the top 4 ranked and then 4 wild cards, but it's basically just the 8 most marketable players.
Pretty much, yeah. Well, obviously we had Peter Wright, who finished bottom last
Yes.
year. He'll be,
I don't think he'll be. Yes, slightly different.
he'll be definitely in conversation for.
He might be.
Coach
I
comes
don't.
out.
I wouldn't expect him. Yeah, I know. See, this is what happens when I watch Essendon games. All I can think of, instead of the 2-metre Essendon player, is the 2-time Scottish World Darts champion. I don't expect Wright to be there. Aspinall might be another one who might not be there. He's had a few injuries as well.
Yes, he
the
has,
last little bit.
unfortunately.
He wasn't great at the match play. He
No.
didn't play in Australia either, or New
Yes,
Zealand
that's right.
either.
He didn't come out.
No, he,
Can I ask what injury you do in darts?
I was going
he can
to.
have.
That's a good question.
He had
Good
some
question.
sort
Elbow?
of shoulder. Yeah, it's a bit like, sort of a tennis elbow sort of thing. Gerwyn
Yeah.
Price has had a bunch of back problems as well. He might be another one who won't play either. But Damon Heta or Stephen Bunting, I feel like they are
Does
two
happen-
that are
It does
going
happen
in the right way.
more commonly than you think, actually. 'Cause,
Yeah.
You know, but doing this action so many
Yeah,
times
I'm sure it does. It's just
throughout plenty of
It is.
events.
It is slightly amusing. Yeah,
and
I have
also-
talked to
It's not like
my parents
I'm
about
sure that they don't have massive training programs where they go out and go to
No,
the
they're
gym
not
and
doing.
No,
that.
that's
No,
right.
they're mostly
That's
staying
right.
at home
Yeah.
and throwing at a board or going
But,
to a
uh,
pub,
that-
maybe.
Yeah.
Again, that's probably why they play so much because it's very transferable. You don't have
Yeah,
to train. And
yeah.
training
stuff.
program is going to the pub and having a couple.
Yeah.
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 on it.
So
I mean-
back injury and stuff might be because they're carrying too much of a beer gut.
Essentially.
We do
Well,
joke.
Yeah,
I'm
they
sure
are
big
But
guys.
we love that. Like
Yeah.
that's the culture of darts, isn't it?
We've
Yeah.
seen plenty of players in the past, like John Henderson, who
Yes.
you know just like no real physique at all, but
No.
he's just still going for
But
it.
yeah,
you know?
he is absolutely. So we'll see what goes there.
Yes, looking forward to it.
Looking forward to it. World Series of Darts finals and World Grand Prix are the next 2 really
Yes.
big televised events. They should be on KO and Foxtel.
Yep.
And with the Premier League not too far away, now we start sort of thinking about World Championships as well,
We do.
right at the end of the year.
It's
You wanna
extremely
be-
exciting,
It is
isn't
because
it?
there's, as
over
I've
the
said
Christmas
multiple
period?
times, there's heaps in this sort of last 4 months of the year with the Grand Prix, the Grand Slam, the European Championship, the Players' Championship finals, and then before you know it, it's Christmas.
That's
There's
right.
cricket on,
Yep.
and there's darts on.
Boxing Day, Test
Yes.
matches, everything's going on around
Yeah.
Christmas time.
And we're going to bring it all to you. Is that I think we've got
That's-
we've
yep,
got time
that's
for. So, like the boys said, you've got darts, which is ramping up. Cricket, which we haven't even mentioned, that will be ramping up in the next couple of months. But for this next week, before we see you again on the Around the Grounds version of the Extra Time podcast. You've got the Paralympic Games, you've got NBA news, you've got F1 news, you've got an F1 race in Monza, you've got NFL news with the rosters. We'll make sure we try and cover that for you. We've got AFLW and you've got AFL, just news. Not too much actual action, but a lot of news over this week.
Damn pre-finals.
If you want some AFL yap, make sure you tune in to our AFL version of the podcast. That'll be right beside this one, I'm sure, on the channel. But until then, from this podcast and the boys, well done. We'll see you next week. Like and subscribe for some more.